Two guys not related, yet somehow are given the same name. It's time for the Two Daves podcast, where we'll answer the age-old question, are two Daves better than one? And now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to another Two Daves podcast, in which you'll be asking yourself the question, did I miss my turnoff? That's right. You've entered the family-friendly safe zone, and I'm Dave.
And I'm the good driver, Dave, and I don't miss my turnoff. So just to let you know, hey, this ain't tacos. If you have not heard that before, you've not been listening to the Two Daves podcast.
Right.
Hey, if you're listening to us on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost. And then hit the little bell because it will let you know when the next podcast is. Dave, why don't you let people know when our podcasts come out?
Our podcasts are released every Tuesday morning at 5:30ish. And and that's on any platform, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right. Well, this is the Two Daves Nation, and we need to get the word out. So we need your help. We need you to share with as many people as you can. You can force them into listening if you would like to. Blackmail them with the Two Daves podcast. Do whatever you got to do. But we sure appreciate you listening to us and being with us. And one more thing, if you would comment on what you liked in this podcast and what you would like to maybe listen to us talk about later on. And we don't want comments like, we know that the Dave that's talking right now is the better looking Dave, the smarter Dave.
You won't get those comments.
That's true. What you're wanting is the correction Dave, the Dave that makes all the corrections on the show. So anyway, we'd love to hear from you.
Really about this podcast, we often joke about how, we have 4 listeners, but really Dave and I have been blown away by how many people are checking this out and listening to us. And we appreciate you coming along because honestly, we never really dreamed that we would have much of an audience. We just wanted to do this. This is just something that we wanted to do together. So we're glad that you're along for the journey.
Yeah, we appreciate that very much. Thinking about This Ain't Tacos, Dave, I get on YouTube. Do you ever get on YouTube? And I remember. You get on YouTube to listen to worship music. And what's the other thing you watch on YouTube?
I watch a lot of movies on YouTube.
Movies,
That's
okay.
Pretty much what I do is watch movies or Gaither Vocal Band. Yeah.
And do you remember what I watch on YouTube? What's one of the things?
The strangest stuff.
Candlepin bowling.
You find, anything you want to find on YouTube is there, and you find it. Well,
lately, Dave, I've been watching some of the old Johnny Carson shows.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah, because the new ones, they are terrible. Anyway,
I noticed that when in the old days, when a guest would come on Johnny Carson, they just talk. It wasn't scripted.
No.
And now on these late night shows, everything is scripted. The guest,
political,
everything that's going to be asked, and it's all planned. And
yeah,
I miss the Johnny Carson days. Boy, I sound like an old geezer, don't I?
Well, Johnny Carson was telling you are an old geezer anyway, but Johnny Carson was telling a joke about Prince Charles. And this was from I don't know when it was, late 70s, early 80s. And he said, did you hear about Prince Charles who came to Texas and he ate his first taco? And the crowd went, no. And he says, yeah, I guess he got to the throne earlier than he thought.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Now, that reminds me of something else. And then I'll correct my thinking here after this. But he was talking to Tommy Newsom. You know who Tommy Newsom is there, right?
He would direct the orchestra when Doc wasn't there.
Right. And there was a time he was sitting at the desk, Johnny was, and there was a segment they did on questions to ask the Tonight Show staff. Okay. And the one question was, does Tommy Newsom wear designer underwear? And Tommy Newsom, he was a straight man. He looked at Johnny Carson. He said this. He says, I make my own designs. I just had to laugh. It's good. Well, enough laughing. It's time for some insightful truth, Dave.
Yeah, That's right. We've had way too much laughter. So
That's
it is
right.
time. It's time for the 2 Daves fact of the day.
Where's the music for that?
What?
Where's our music for that?
Well, you know what? It hasn't been written yet.
No, we need to do that.
That's true. We're going to have to do that. All right. Hey, I'll get right on that. I'll write that this week. And next week we'll have music.
Awesome.
For the 2 Daves fact of the day, because we want to help our audience be the best that they can be. And so here we go. Are you ready?
Yep.
This is today's fact. And this is true. Absolutely true. We asked our fact checkers to check it.
Good.
And yeah, they were busy. They were busy checking facts on Facebook, but they got away and helped us with this one. The fire hydrant patent was lost in a fire.
that is, how ironic is that?
That is the definition of irony right there.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Oh, by the way, honey, don't forget to iron my shirt for tomorrow. Okay, thanks.
Hey, you know what? We did an episode here a few weeks back that talked about some of the extreme sports.
Yeah.
And one of them was extreme ironing.
Yes.
And one of my daughters, I can't remember, I think it was Jessica, when she listened to that, she says, I would be so into extreme ironing. I would watch that.
I can believe that too.
Yeah.
I think she said when she was on our podcast last, and we have a podcast coming up with our kids, and I think she was ironing, wasn't she? Or she had just finished ironing?
No, she was not ironing. No.
Oh, she doesn't iron?
No.
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 Oh, that's funny. What was I thinking? Sorry, Jess. Oh, well. Hey, let's get on, man. We're making no progress at all.
Well.
Just like you said, did I miss my turnoff? I don't know. Hey.
What do we have to do anyway?
Yeah, I know. Hey, are you one of those food mixers that, you like to mix the foods on your plate into one big glob or pile of slop? Or are you one of those food separators that eats one thing at a time and you throw a fit if some other food touches other types of food?
Yeah, no, I am a food separator. Now, I will tell you that as I've gotten older, practical situations have made me say, well, if I want all this food, like you go through a church potluck or whatever,
yep.
And if you want all this food, you're going to have to let it touch. But I let it touch on the sides, but I do not mix the food. No. I'm not a monster. No.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Really?
It doesn't surprise.
What about you?
Well, what do you think I am?
I think you're a food separator.
No.
Are you a mixer? Really?
Oh yeah. If you'd have grown up with my grandfather, he mixed everything, and so I guess I kind of got that from him. But like we go to the Mexican restaurant, and I'll get like the seafood chimichanga, which is really good. And I get you get beans, refried beans and rice, and I love sour cream and the salsa and the lettuce and the tomatoes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I just cut it all up and mix it. It looks like
you're supposed to do that.
Well, and then I make spaghetti sandwiches, and then when if I can put it together, I do. I think it's just better that way. Now there's some things I can't do. I can't do Jell-O with like mashed potatoes. That's gross to me.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, and I've also, you asked about eating one thing at a time. I still to this day, I eat things one thing at a time on my plate. And I remember when I was a kid that my parents would chide me about that and say that that's impolite. When we go to somebody's house, you eat a little bit of this, eat a little bit of the mashed potatoes, eat a little bit of the meat, eat a little bit of the green beans. And I said, why is it rude to eat one thing at a time? And they didn't have an answer for me. And I just eat one thing at a time. I'll eat this thing and I'll turn my plate, and I'll eat this thing and I'll rotate my plate, and that's the way I do it. I always have.
Well, I bet you're real fun at a Thanksgiving meal. That's for sure.
I am a barrel of laughs.
Yes.
I'm also a very fast eater though. So I can eat so fast, nobody notices that I'm doing that.
Well, I think we're just going to have fried chicken this weekend, and that will be the only thing that we have.
I'm going to be with you this week.
I know.
You're just going to have fried chicken?
Well, I don't want to sit there watching you eat your food 10 hours later. I mean, come on.
I eat fast. I'm telling you.
Uh-huh. You don't do many things fast, Dave. We know that. Hey, we had our incredible research team that you talk about. You talk so highly of them too.
Oh yeah, they're highly overrated.
Yes. We had them look up why so many people hate having their food touched to other foods.
That's right.
And so
I'm not the only one.
No, but this is more for you. Okay. You food weirdo than me. So let's talk about this. Okay.
Scientific research has come up with an answer. There is actually a word for people like me.
Well, we know.
I was pausing to see if you had a word.
I do. Brumotactilophobia.
Brumotactilophobia. That's right. It's a condition. It's actually a very mild form of obsessive compulsive disorder.
That's correct.
Now, by the way, can I just interrupt for just a second? I'm going to talk about OCD for just a minute.
Okay.
Because if people overdo this OCD thing, anytime, they talk about how they like things being in order or they like things being just so, they say, oh, my OCD is kicking in. Folks, do not tell anybody you have OCD unless you have OCD, because I've known people with obsessive compulsive disorder, and it is not a game. It is a true disorder. It is a mental illness, and it is a torturous thing. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And so please, I just hate it when people claim OCD like they're proud of it. No, you do not want to have OCD. It is possible to have obsessive compulsive tendencies. And I think this is one of those things. I think eating one thing at a time on my plate, that's an obsessive compulsive tendency. But thank God I don't have the disorder. So
anyway. Don't you have doofus tilophobia? Isn't that what you have?
Doofus tilophobia?
Yeah.
And what's the definition of doofus tilophobia?
For those that don't have OCD but would desperately look like it from the outside, that would be you.
Okay. Anyway, what makes food touching so undesirable? All right. There are a few reasons. There are a few things. And this is one thing I hear about people. I hear from people like you. Well, it's all going to the same place anyway. Yeah, but you know what? You don't have to taste it together while it's on its way there.
That is, yeah, I get it.
Different textures and tastes do not mix. It's just true.
It's true.
Yeah. A lot of us just like to taste those separately. And, there's just some combinations like you were talking about. Did you say Jell-O and mashed potatoes?
Yes.
Yeah. Those just don't go together. They don't taste well together. So, people like me, we like to enjoy our food separately and not combine those tastes.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, since you were talking about OCD, I want to be on the other side and say that those that have ADHD is a serious thing as well.
That is very serious.
And we do kid about that. And we're not making fun of people that have that, because we know that's serious.
Yes.
But there's some of us that will use verbiage like that, won't we? And
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so mine is separated foods simply look more pleasant to the eye if they remain organized on the plate.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think if you do what you do and you pile them all together in one blob, I think that looks disgusting.
I'll just, what goes in goes out. It's all gonna, make it through.
Moving right along.
It's just the circle of life, that's the way it is. So, I mentioned Thanksgiving meals have got to be very difficult for these people as they watch their family, like me, mix their food. It's probably pretty disgusting, to tell you the truth.
Well, honestly, I don't watch what other people do to their food, because I think I probably would be disgusted. And, we have little kids in our family now because I have grandkids, and I've learned that it's just best to just not even look. just keep my eye on my own plate.
I dry heave at some of that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
Was there another one? Another reason?
Yes. And this is absolutely true. It's a control
Hmm.
Some people typically have small ways of putting control in their otherwise out of control lives, and keeping their food separated is one of them. And it's not just keeping your food separated, but disordered eating, whether it be bulimia, anorexia, all of those are forms of control. And I've studied this a little bit because I've dealt with it in ministry with some people who've had disordered eating. And it is an area of control that they can exercise in an otherwise out of control life. So, yeah.
I don't think we think about that stuff.
Yeah. No,
and that's so true. That's so true.
Yeah. It's like OCD. It is, it's a bad thing. It really is.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do you think this is a thing just for OCD? Don't you think there's a lot of people that they pretend that they have control in their life and they know they don't, so they just are going after the things that they think they can control?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think
with food.
They find some comfort in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wild.
Yeah, it is. Well, hey Dave, before we get into our topic tonight, let's talk about some weird food combinations that some people say they go great together and other people say otherwise. So we'll kind of see what we think tonight about some of these. These are actual food combinations that people love.
Okay, so I can probably already tell you that you're not going to say yes to any of these, but I could be wrong. So why don't we, after you start with one, let's just talk about, would you do that or not? Okay. Well, or have you experienced it?
First, I want to start with something that from when I was a kid. Do you remember the show Laverne and Shirley?
Yep.
Do you know what I'm going to say?
Oh, peanuts and Coke.
And Coke? No.
Huh? What? My dad used to do that down at the hey, listen, no, wait a second. Down where he worked at the factory. Who? I only lived a half a block from where he worked. In the summer, he'd let me come down there. He'd buy me a Coke. Everybody got a Coke, and you would buy some of these peanuts, and you'd open up the peanut bag and pour them into the Coke.
What did that have to do with Laverne and Shirley?
That they did that.
No.
Yes, they did.
Did they? Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Laverne had a favorite drink. She combined milk and Pepsi.
Oh, that's right.
Remember milk and Pepsi?
Oh, isn't that like some kind of cow or something, right? Or am I thinking of great pop and milk is a purple cow, right?
I don't know. I've never heard of it.
I think it's called a purple. I could be wrong. I don't know.
We obviously did not discuss these beforehand.
We didn't know.
Would you drink milk and Pepsi together?
I would try it.
You know what? At first, I think, you could hear the studio audience go, ooh. But when you stop and think about it, milk and Pepsi, that's like a Pepsi float. I mean, milk and ice cream. So that's what I think. You pour Pepsi on ice cream. So I think milk and Pepsi would be good. That's one thing that I would like.
I have one question, Dave.
Uh-oh.
Who's in your studio audience? I don't have anybody in my studio audience.
No, I'm Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Should we start over or what? No, we'll kep going. Go ahead.
Give me one.
Okay. Ice cream and French fries.
Ice cream and French fries? No, that's too, you got your salty and your sweet, and those two things do not go together.
I have people in our church.
My wife is in the room and she's got her thumbs up. She would eat that. She would eat ice cream and French fries.
I see people in our church do that.
Well, I've seen it. Your church have problems.
Yes, I know. Okay. What else do you have?
Okay. Coke and Pepsi and fried chicken. Now, I think that means like dipping your fried chicken in.
Yes.
That's nasty.
I would do that. I would try it. I'm just saying I'd try it. I've never tried it before, but I would try it. It doesn't sound that disgusting.
Now, I can understand like marinating your chicken or ribs or whatever in Dr. Pepper or Coke or Pepsi and putting those on the grill. That would be great. But no, like just to take your glass of Dr. Pepper or Coke or Pepsi or whatever and dip your fried chicken in? No.
Well, usually that's with the Colonel Sanders chicken. Is what it is. Mm-hmm, KFC. No. Yep. Okay, here's one, and I've heard of this. I've never tried it, but cheddar cheese and apple pie.
Yeah, I've heard of that a lot too, and I've never tried it. I probably would try it. I just have never had the opportunity.
I don't know. It's dairy, right? I mean,
it's dairy.
I don't know. I don't think I could do that. Well, really? But if you gave me some money, I'd probably try it.
That's very interesting that you're the combiner and you probably wouldn't try it. I'm the separator and I'd try it.
Cheese with other things is very, I don't know.
Interesting.
For me, that's just for me.
Well, how about this one? This is a pretty big one. You can find these at restaurants, including Sonic. Peanut butter and jelly on a hamburger.
Now that sounds good. I've never had that. I've had eggs on a hamburger, but I've never had peanut butter and jelly.
Eggs on a hamburger are great. Breakfast burgers. Yeah, those are great.
Well, I would think peanut butter, jelly, and egg on a sandwich on a hamburger would be awesome.
Okay, now you're going insane. No, you know what? It's intriguing to me. Peanut butter and jelly on a hamburger. It's intriguing. I don't know that I could try it. I've heard a lot of people say that it's good. I don't know. I would have to be in the right mood.
I would try it. I would. Yeah. Okay. In fact, I'm hungry for that right now. How about banana and bacon? Bacon?
Well, you know what Jimmy Gaffigan says.
I know.
Makes everything better.
It does.
But
it does.
I don't know. I think that's going a little too far. I don't think I would try banana and bacon.
That would be a weird texture right there.
That would be.
But I'd try it. Okay.
What about honey and pizza?
Yeah, I'd do that.
Would you? Yeah,
I'd do that. I like pineapple on pizza.
I love pineapple on pizza.
So I'm kind of thinking maybe that would be.
Now, I have a granddaughter who's 6 years old, and she puts ranch dressing on everything, including pizza.
I do that. Yeah, once in a while. Yeah. What about green apples and salsa?
No, I don't want green apples in anything. I'm not a green apple fan.
Oh, I've had it before, but it's been a little bit. It's jelly and salsa is what it is. So it's like a spicy jelly with. It's pretty good.
I don't like spicy jellies, like jalapeno jelly and things like that.
Oh, I love that. That's good. Yeah, I know.
All right. Well, what about watermelon and feta cheese?
You had feta cheese before?
I've had feta cheese and I despise it. I love. I don't mind.
I like it. Yeah. I don't know. Now, the reason why I would say yes is because feta cheese is salty.
Feta cheese is nasty.
Yeah. It just wrap it up in your dirty old sock and stuck on the sock
That's
for a
the
while.
Taste. Feta cheese tastes like dirty old sock.
I know.
Exactly what it is.
I know. Well, hey, you know what? If you can think of other things, just let's have our audience, more than 4 of you, put something down in the comments for us. We'd like to hear what you do, what you like together. And, if you have OCD or ADHD and we miss some things, inform us. We're learners, right?
That's right.
Me more than you, right? So, hey, well, Dave, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, you know what? This episode is going to drop just before the 4th of July. And so I think it would be good if we could talk about patriotism, and especially where patriotism and faith meet. So the title of this episode is Land That I Love.
Question mark, exclamation point. And yeah. Well, Dave, I used to watch as a young boy many, many years ago now, and probably even into my teen years. It was one of those, what are those called? When you do something and what's it called?
I don't know.
It's our favorite things that we did. What do you call it when you like something but you don't want other people to know?
Oh, a guilty pleasure.
A guilty pleasure. As a teenager, I watched the Super Friends.
Super Friends, buddy. I'm telling you what, that was my favorite when I was a kid.
I loved it too.
I don't think I watched it when I was a teenager, but I was too busy with my ventriloquist dummy.
Well, yes, you were. Some of our audience may not even know what Super Friends are. Do you have some insight into that?
Oh, yeah, Super Friends. It was an American animated television series. It was produced by Dan Quayle, and it was, no, that's not true. That's not true.
No.
But it was about a team of superheroes. It was on the air from 1973 until 1985, and it was a part of the Saturday morning cartoon lineup. It was my favorite show on Saturday mornings. I would kill to watch the Super Friends, and then afterwards I would go out and play Super Friends. I'd be all of them. But it was based on the Justice League of America and associated comic book characters published by DC Comics.
Did you ever watch Johnny? What's his name? Oh my goodness,
Johnny Quest.
Yeah, Johnny Quest.
Yeah. I had a Johnny Quest doll. Yep.
Oh, really? Yeah, those are some good. I don't even think they have Saturday morning stuff like that anymore, do they?
I don't know.
Not with Nickelodeon and all that stuff. Well, but anyway, there were two characters called the Wonder Twins. Do you remember them? Right?
I remember the Wonder Twins. I wasn't them.
Yeah, me neither. But their superhero trait for them was to put their rings together and say, Wonder Twin powers activate. And then the music would play. And they were pretty lame because when they activated, they would form into an ice ladder, a mouse, a vial of water, an ice boat, a lot of ice things here. A brontosaurus, an ice ramp, a walrus, a pelican, a lake, an elephant, ice clippers, bookcase, a glacier, and an ice crowbar, just to mention a few. Pretty lame, right? Kind of like the 2 Days podcast.
It's not that bad.
No.
Well, anyway, we say all that to say this. The 2 Days podcast, wow, this is really a stretch, but we're going to Wonder Twin activate in the form of patriotism and faith.
Let's do it, Dave. Wonder Dave powers. Let's do it. Come on. Here we go. Wonder Dave powers.
Wonder Dave powers activate.
Form of patriotism
and faith. My wife is in there yelling, saying we're a bunch of nerds.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we're recording this on the front side of Memorial Day and July 4th. In fact, we're a week after Armed Forces Day.
Yes.
And so,
summer's fast approaching, and with it, boy, I
it
tell
is.
You what we can expect, especially after last year's COVID bout. We're expecting a lot of backyard barbecues this year and swimming pools, and movie stars, vacations, multiple holidays honoring our country. And matter of fact, our nation's birthday is there a couple of weeks into summer. So is it any wonder that for many of us, summer feels like the most patriotic season of all?
Or does it anymore?
Yeah, really.
Webster Dictionary defines patriotism, Dave, as love for or devotion to one's country. It seems simple enough, doesn't it? But it's not always easy to know what this looks like in practical everyday life, especially in the days that we're living in today. Yeah.
Well, and, we heard our president tell us that he may possibly give us permission to celebrate the 4th of July this year.
Hallelujah.
Last year, we heard from people saying that it was our patriotic duty not to celebrate. So that's interesting. But, first of all, I do believe that this is a great time to stop and give honor to everybody who has and are currently serving in the military.
Yes.
But I want to go back to the beginning and thank every person who fought for the freedoms that many of us have today. People that have, that are long gone now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dave, you can be spit on for saying things like that.
Well, I have been spit on.
But yeah, it seems like our woke culture is totally against patriotism. And we're going to dig into that today. At least they're against the symbols of our country. And we got to remember and remind ourselves that we're still a work in progress. And one of the questions that I had to ask was this: does the church take patriotism too far as well?
Are you asking me?
Well, I think it's a good question.
Well, I wasn't expecting you to ask that question.
Well, that's all right. You don't have to answer it,
Well, it is a question that, and honestly, I was kind of hoping that we could work it in, because I've thought a lot about it over the years. I used to do a lot of, God and country type of rallies in pastoring and everything. And I got to really realizing that, patriotism for the United States of America didn't exist when the Bible was written.
Right.
So sometimes I think we can go overboard, and we can kind of put all of our eggs in the basket of patriotism in the United States of America. And I believe very much in patriotism, but sometimes I think we try to meld those two together and say that if you're spiritual, you're a patriot. And if you're a patriot, you're spiritual. And the two don't necessarily go together.
Yeah. And times have really caused people to think twice about patriotism. I'm patriotic.
I am.
And I think we're going to answer some of this stuff. But I was watching again on YouTube. There was a Chicago Cubs, I think it was close in July sometime back in the 70s. And there was a couple guys that came out on the playing area, and they had an American flag, and they were getting ready. They were dousing it with, lighter fluid and all that. And they were getting ready to light the match. And Rick Monday, who played for the Cubs, ran by and grabbed the flag. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the crowd cheered.
Yes. Oh, and the announcers, I remember, matter of fact, I even just heard not very long ago, I heard the replay of that. And the announcers were praising Monday as a hero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would happen today.
Well, that was my question. Do you think the crowd would cheer? Do you think the players would stop the flag from being burnt? And do you think the announcers would cheer? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. The players would have to get up off their knees during the national anthem to go and do something about it. I think that our times have really changed over the last 40 years.
This should be a good discussion, Dave.
Yeah. So, what we hear a lot about the woke culture.
Mm-hmm.
And has it influenced faith today? I think that's a question that we need to ask today.
Yeah. Well, and has it influenced patriotism?
Yeah, really.
So there's a recently published book called Stay Woke that states this, that real patriotism is all about staying woke.
Okay.
And an excerpt from this book puts it this way. This is a history of vanity. Stop me anytime you want to, Dave.
Stop.
Okay.
Stop. No, I just want to do that. No,
okay.
Go ahead.
So this is a history of vanity. For a better today and even better tomorrow, we must be vigilant of over congratulations. What do you think they're saying there?
I don't have a clue. For a better today and an even better tomorrow, we must be vigilant of over congratulations. I don't think that author, I personally don't think that author knows what they're talking about. Over congratulations. Does that mean that we should be careful, that we should not be too happy that we're a free nation and that we have arisen out of so much adversity in our past to become the nation that we are, that we shouldn't be proud of that? Is that what they're saying?
Well, I kind of think, if I would read it in the way that the woke generation reads it, is for a better today and even better tomorrow, we must be vigilant at not talking about our past and the heroes of the past, but instead focus on what we can do today.
Well, there has been a great de-emphasis on the heroes of our past. There's been a revision of history in dredging up some of the skeletons in the closets of these men who formed America and have made them to be less than what I learned. Like, shoot, Dave, when I was a kid, and when you were a kid, did you not hear that Christopher Columbus was a hero?
Yeah.
And today, my goodness, people are no longer, they don't even celebrate Columbus Day. They've changed it to Indigenous Peoples Day because they're ashamed of who Christopher Columbus was. Well, you know what? Not everyone is perfect. I mean, for Pete's sake, there are skeletons in the closets of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Joe Biden. It doesn't matter who's in charge. There's skeletons in their closet. They're not perfect. But I'm so thankful that we had those men and women that had some backbone to see that this country would become free.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if they didn't even see themselves that they were part of that plan, they were,
Yeah.
He goes on to say this. He says, don't let your love of country lull you into complacency.
Okay.
He said, staying woke is calling out injustice. It's advocating for the vulnerable, and it's working against the forces of anti-Black racism. Now, I don't have a problem with that at all. We need to call out injustice.
Sure.
We need to advocate for the vulnerable, and we need to work against racism of all colors. It's terrible. It's hatred.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm reminded of something, Dave. You remember Micah 6:8? We don't, this is not a Bible study again, but remember what Micah 6:8 says? It says, do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly.
Yeah.
Today now, you're talking about the church woke. The woke church uses that, and even secular people use that from the Bible. And they associate it with like modern social justice movement. So it's tied into the ideas like wealth and privilege distribution, as well as many socialist public policies. It's not really what Micah 6:8 is saying. It's not even close. And when you think about this, we're people that are saved by mercy. I'm going somewhere with this, Dave. Mercy is not the problem. The problem comes from how mercy and justice relate to one another. Now, you and I both understand this because in the most basic sense, when you look at the word justice, it's receiving what we're owed. Correct?
Sure. Yes.
What do we deserve?
We deserve hell.
That's right. And mercy is receiving something that we're not owed.
Right.
Okay, so it's important to understand that because that is some of the foundation of the gospel right there. If mercy is something that we're owed, then we lose the gospel. And if God owed us salvation, then salvation is not by grace. And the gospel is so great because God gave us the exact opposite of what we deserved. He forgave those who deserve justice. So when I reread this and I look at this and I go, we need to call out injustice. And we need to advocate for the vulnerable, and we need to work against the forces of racism. But where Micah 6:8 has nothing to do with calling out injustice. It's talking about this personal relationship or this connection we're to have with God. I mean, so we'll get into this. Let me just keep.
Well, before you get too far, let me call out one of the quotes that you said. Don't let your love of country lull you into complacence.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that a love of country would lull anyone into complacence.
No.
I think if you love your country, you are going to do what you can to make your country great. I know that sounds like a political speech, from Mr. Trump or whatever. But seriously, a person who loves their country wants it to be the best that it can possibly be. And I don't think you're going to be lulled into complacency by your patriotism. I think it's going to cause you to seek to call out injustice and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, JFK said the same thing.
Sure.
So that's been something I think has been said by many presidents. And so when we call out injustice, there's a lot going on, and God have, but many of us deserve the things that we've done.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that will play into something as we talk about it later on. So
there's another recently published book.
Yeah.
Are you aware of this one? It's called Woke Church. I think you already even mentioned it.
Yep.
And on the back cover, the author, and his name is Eric Mason, he writes this on the back cover of Woke Church. He gives a definition of woke. Adjective, number 1, able to understand how cultural, socioeconomic, philosophical, and historical realities inform our responsibility as believers in Jesus Christ. The church in America should have rejected the first whispers of slavery, but we didn't. We should have preached about the image of God when the dark-skinned among us were declared subhuman, but we didn't. We should have stopped segregation and Jim Crow before they affected our communities, but we didn't. We should have protested racial profiling and police brutality before anyone else. We should have been woke, but we've been asleep. That's the quote.
What do you think?
Well, I there's certainly some truth to it. I just tell you right now, I don't like the word woke. Matter of fact, I mock the word woke. One commentator I've heard say woke is a joke, and I think it is. I think the church needs to be awake, and if being awake is all part of being revived, and a church that's in revival is not going to tolerate things such as racism. A church, matter of fact, we've seen evidence in history that a church that's revived throws out racism. It used to be years ago that churches were segregated. You had your white churches and you had black churches. When revival came, those churches came together because racism was thrown out. And so what we need an awake church, not a woke church. We need an awake church, one that's alive in Jesus Christ, so that these things that are wrong, we'll know that they're wrong and we'll decry them.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is we have segregated churches again today.
Yeah, we do.
We have Spanish-speaking churches. We have all black churches. Mm-hmm. We have all white churches. We have all Chinese churches, and it goes on and on.
We need revival.
We need revival. And then we've got a this is a pastor who's also the author of Woke Church that's just talking about how, everybody felt this way. I don't think not every white person wanted a slave. Am I correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct.
So when you say that, I mean, we went to Civil War. Now, I know there's many reasons why we went to Civil War, but the reality is the Civil War was won so that slavery could be broken. Now, people are saying all kinds of stuff. They're saying that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Well, of course, we continue to have segregation in America, in certain parts of America, but it wasn't every white person that felt that way.
Exactly. And sometimes I think, by the way our children are being educated in schools today, I think it's the idea is put across that every white person was a slave owner. Every white person was a racist. And we're supposed to, as white people, we're supposed to feel guilty because there were slave owners. Listen, I am ashamed that slavery was legal in this country. I'm ashamed of that. But I'm not going to apologize for it because I don't know of any of my ancestors that were slave owners. I don't think any of them were. And I certainly would be against that. So there's nothing to apologize for.
I saw pictures today. I was doing some reading and I saw some pictures of slaves that were beaten with a whip. It's terrible.
Yes, it's a terrible chapter in our history.
Oh, it is. But I'm thankful that we've progressed and now we want to digress because, there's a political propaganda going out there that it's ridiculous.
But you want to know something? We're over that chapter in our history, but we have some other chapters that are still going on that are just as terrible.
That's right.
For instance, since 1973, it has been legal to kill children. And I know that we've been advised to stay away from that subject, but that is a terrible injustice that's being done in our nation for the last 50 years, that the lives of unborn children are being taken. And that's something that I'm ashamed of right now.
Well, the Stay Woke book, it says we're calling out injustice and we're advocating for the vulnerable and working against the forces of anti-Black racism. That's patriotic. But I'm telling you what, if God never looked at color in the Bible, never did.
Right.
And you want to call out the injustice, is let's call out the million babies that are, killed every year.
Yes.
And some of those girls that are having abortions, they're clueless.
Yes.
They're clueless. It's sad. So
another terrible injustice is human trafficking.
Yes, it is
going on within our borders, and it's only been exacerbated in the last few months because of the border crisis down south. And it's terrible what's happening to these people. Terrible.
No.
It's slavery again. It's white slavery.
Yep.
It's sex slavery.
Yep. And the woke generation wants to say, you people don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to understand each other's, what we've gone through. We've all gone through stuff.
Sure.
Well, we're digging a hole here. Dr. Mason goes on to challenge the church in America. He says, get up, sleeper, and rise up from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the scripture really is talking about, getting woke socially?
No, that has nothing to do with revival.
No, not at all.
The social conscience, I think, will be a byproduct of an awake church. But it's not going to be the end all.
Okay, so here's where my Micah 6:8 gets into.
Yeah.
He goes on and he says, it's time to take a hard look at our history, stand together against the indignities and injustice in our world. If you're just looking at slavery, you're missing out on a whole bunch of other terrible things. Mm-hmm. To understand that justice is both theological and sociological, and that there is no intimacy with God without justice in one's heart. I'm sorry, but justice is, when you talk about sociological, you're hard pressed to talk about that from the Bible in the sense of how the verse is given. He's talking about you and God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we are to have a voice for those that have no voice. I get that. But the main thrust of justice and mercy is not about us trying to make things right. It's us understanding that what we really deserve is not what we're getting. And that's the grace and mercy of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and he says that there's no intimacy with God without justice in one's heart. Man, no more waiting, no more sleeping, for Christ is our King. He's coming back and he'll be looking for a woke church. No, he's looking for a right church is what he's looking for. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And we don't get that spotlessness from social awareness. We get that spotlessness only from the grace of Jesus Christ. It's the only way it comes.
But see, we talked about canceling culture, Dave. And one of the things that's very disturbing is that it's saying a certain part of our people can't speak.
Yeah.
We can't say anything. We can't make any comments because we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so when you shut up the culture, and people would say, well, you shut up the slaves. I understand that, but we're not living in those days anymore.
No. And
so
nobody who is listening to this knows what it's like to be a slave. No one knows what it's like to own a slave. Those days are over. So Dave, do you think, is it fair to blame white Christians for the sins of earlier generations.
You're only responsible for your own sins.
Yeah.
Now we're to pray for repentance in America or in our nation, but I can't stand before God on behalf of you, Dave, and pray and say, God, forgive him of his sins.
That's right. That's right. Those who have sinned, no matter what the sin is, whether it's owning slaves or some other sin, they're going to have to stand before God for those sins. They'll have to answer for them, and they have to stand alone. We can't stand with them. Yeah.
Now, one thing I can tell you that we know this, that there's a lot of people that they've formed wrong opinions and views on all different types of races. It's not just white on black. It's, I mean, you name every color that's in America, and there's racism there. And we don't understand some of the after effects of that. I get that. I mean, I understand it's harder for some people than others, but at the same time, not all white people have a ticket to Hollywood. I mean, it's not like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's hard to find white Christians today anywhere that's expressing support for segregation, slavery, or unfair treatment. They don't do that.
Mm-mm.
They don't advocate unfair treatment because you're a certain color. But it still happens today, not because of color, but why? Because of sin.
That's right. It's racism not a race thing. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And they say that's being woke. No, that's just the reality. So Colossians 1:20 says, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior, but now he's reconciled you by Christ's physical body through the death to present you holy in his sight.
Mm-hmm.
So reconciliation fulfills what Jesus said would be a key element in demonstrating to the world that we're Christians, that we love one another. If you have racism, if you have prejudice, you can't love one another.
That's right.
So this is a very much of a sin issue, and you can't justify the sin of others by you committing other sins.
That's right. And John said, if you claim to love God, but have hatred in your heart for someone else, you don't love God. You're a liar.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. It's very plain and simple how we treat others. I mean, we're to put up the interest of others above ourselves.
Yeah.
My point is this, Dave, we can't reconcile on behalf of other people's sins and faults from the past.
Right.
We can only reconcile with others based upon what we've done wrong against someone in the present. But we first have to go to God for our sins.
Yes. And I mean, we look in the Word, God was never about reconciliation happening through race or color or social grouping. He was all about dealing with our own personal sins. Mm-hmm. And then the way we treated others then would come in alignment with his will. If we were following Jesus Christ, the way we treat others is going to change.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that reconciliation at its core is about the relationship that man has with God first.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
Until you make that right, until your relationship with God is set right, relationships between human beings will always be at odds.
That's right. You can get over human trafficking and there's going to be another heinous sin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So does faith or Christianity, do those things mix with patriotism?
Well, now we're getting down to it. And I would say this: patriotism is natural. It's not spiritual.
What do you mean by that?
Well, on the one hand, it's completely natural to love one's nation. I mean, to love your hometown.
Yeah.
It's where you're from, of course. I mean, when I lived in Kansas, I'm an Iowa Hawkeye, Yeah. I love that. It's normal to feel attached, right? To family, to a nation, to the culture, to food, to its climate, to its music, and the list can go on. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. And nowhere in Scripture is loving one's homeland condemned.
No.
Not at all. There are a lot of positive images of home in Scripture. And Jesus never rebuked the Jews of his time for loving their nation. He didn't rebuke anyone for loving their nation. He even gave boundaries to nations.
Yeah.
And these nations and boundaries are only temporary compared to eternal life in heaven or hell.
Mm-hmm.
What's more, God sends blessings upon nations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matthew 5:45, he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good and sends rain on the just and the unjust.
Yeah.
So there is, he does recognize nations, but love for home and nation doesn't mean that our people can't do wrong. It doesn't mean that we're blind to our faults.
That's
Every
right.
nation, including America, we've had sin issues, and we're going to continue to have sin issues because only Jesus, as they used to say years ago, Jesus is the answer.
That's right.
He's the only one who can reconcile wrong to right.
Well, racism is sin, hatred is sin, and on it goes. And let me state one thing that it's come to my mind. There's some people in the church that actually believe that America's in covenant with God because we were based upon the founding fathers and the word of God. We're not Israel.
No, we're not.
We're not. And our nation is going to come to an end like every other nation is going to come to an end.
Sure.
So the next one would be that we're told in the Bible that Christians have dual citizenship. And dual citizenship means that you're connected to two different countries at the same time. And the Bible tells us in Philippians 3:20 that if you put your faith in Christ, you're a citizen of heaven. Now, I like that, Dave. It reminds me of how bad this place can get and how good it's going to be in heaven. And I'm part of that because of my relationship with Christ. Before Jesus went to the cross, he prayed for his disciples. Remember this? And he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's praying for his followers because he knew that they're still in this world. And Paul even said that, how I wish I was out of this world. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And
it'd be better to be with Christ. Yeah.
Right. So the first thing is we're told that there's dual citizenship. I like that. We're citizens of heaven. We're citizens of earth.
And that dual citizenship we have often leaves us struggling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
There is a struggle between our citizenship here on earth because this is our home, but yet it's not our home.
Well, and we tend to go to that which we see rather than that which we don't see.
Sure. That's a natural thing.
It is. But, the Lord reminds us in the Bible many times that this is not really our home.
Yeah. And, I've noticed that the older we get, I think the easier it is because we have an investment in heaven. I have my dad is there and my sister and my wife's parents. And the older we get, the more of an investment we have in heaven. But when you're younger, it is harder, I think, you feel pulled, because I can remember I was young. I want the Lord to return, but I'd really like to get married first,
Yeah, that's right.
I'd like to have kids first. And
yes.
I'd like to have grandkids. Well, now I've had everything. I'm ready for heaven.
Now I'm ready for my false teeth. I'm ready for hearing aids, Lord. I'm ready for a new hip.
Now that I have aches and pains, I'm like, okay, Jesus, I'm ready. But really, we really need to decide on this citizenship that we want to value.
Mm-hmm.
We need to live in this world. God has us here for a reason.
Yeah.
And that reason is to be a reflection of his love and grace. I've often said that if we were saved just for heaven, that as soon as we accepted Jesus into our life, we'd be translated into heaven. But that's not his plan. He wants us to be here, to be a reflection of his love and grace. We're temporary citizens here on earth, but for the Christian, we are eternal citizens of heaven.
Yeah, this whole push to defund the police and to abolish the police, I would say this: there's only one way we could do that, Dave. Okay. And that is if we had outstanding citizens that followed the law.
Yeah. And what happens? How can that happen?
That's only through a relationship with Christ.
Absolutely. Revival.
Yeah. And people don't want to believe that. And they're throwing God out of everything. And that's,
I know.
they can believe what they want to, but the sad reality for them is they're missing out on something great.
A few years ago, I had the privilege of being in Wales, my ancestral home. And, scene of an incredible revival over 100 years ago, around the turn of the 20th century. And it was such a significant revival that people were coming to know Christ. And because people were coming to know Christ, crime stopped existing.
Yeah.
The cultural landscape changed because people were kind to one another and people didn't commit crimes. And as a matter of fact, they found that the mule, Wales is a big mining country.
Yeah.
And the mules that they used down in the mines had to be retrained because they only responded to cursing. And when all of these miners were getting saved, their language was changed and they couldn't get the mules to do anything. They had to literally be retrained. That's revival.
Yes,
and
it is.
We would get a taste of that in our wonderful nation. We wouldn't need police forces.
Yeah. I think we're understanding that in this world, it's messed up. Mm-hmm. That's why we had slavery. That's why we had segregation. But that's why we have abortion. Mm-hmm. That's why we have human trafficking. Mm-hmm. I mean, and on it goes. That's why we have addictions of all kinds. Mm-hmm. And that's a really an issue. So, here.
Based on that, okay, let's say that the law would change. Let's say regarding abortion. Let's say the law would change and now abortion would become illegal. I think you mentioned this earlier. Big deal. Another thing is going to arise because the issue is not abortion. The issue is not human trafficking. The issue is not racism. The issue is the heart.
That's right.
And I remember there have been a few times in my pastoral history when I've had people come to me and say, hey, when are you going to preach on such and such a sin? Because there's some people in the congregation who are involved in that. And if you would preach on that, that'd be great. And I said, I'm never going to do that because sin is not a thing. Sin is not this thing or that thing. Sin is a condition of the heart.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it to them, but in my own mind, I'm thinking it sounds like maybe you have a condition of your heart too, that you're so concerned about them and you're not concerned about your own judgmental attitude. But it's a heart condition. It's not something that you can enumerate into this list of things. These are wrong. It's because we're not in relationship with Christ.
Well, we abolish slavery, right?
Yes. And so, yeah.
But slavery did not go away right away.
No, it didn't.
And when that went away, then there was segregation. There were Jim Crow laws. Mm-hmm. And just because you abolish that does not mean, again, like you were saying, that you stop doing it, because the stopping of doing that does not happen from making laws on the outside. It comes from what happens on the inside.
Right. Paul said that in the last days, people would invent ways of doing evil.
Oh boy.
So there's nothing you can do to legislate morality because it comes from the heart. Yeah.
Well, I wrote these down because I think it's important. Politics is not more important than theology.
No.
And this is where we've gotten in trouble. Patriotism does not supersede the way I treat others.
Right.
I'm American and everybody else, who cares? I mean, come on. That's not right. However, it doesn't mean that we become lawless either. We need boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But we also need gates that let people in.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then love for my nation does not mean that I hate other nations.
Right. Right.
And that is the propaganda that comes about every political season. And even now, look at Israel and Hamas, you know. I make a statement. My mom made a statement about Israel and praying for Israel, and somebody that, they're not a believer got on her and talked about, well, don't we need to pray for Hamas? Yes, we do. But the Bible is pretty clear about praying for the peace and safety of Israel too.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's right.
That's boundary praying right there, And but think about Iran. How many people hate Iranians?
Mm-hmm.
But do you know one of the strongest underground churches is in Iran?
Sure.
People hate the Chinese people. They hate the Chinese government. But the strongest underground movement is in China.
Well, there's incredible revival going on in China. Yeah.
So it goes on and on and on. We forget the people. I mean, I don't believe everybody that's Palestine, there's a lot of them are brainwashed, but man, I don't see that. There's a lot of Middle Eastern people that live in Israel.
Yeah.
So it's just things to consider.
There's another thing to consider, and that is that patriotism does not cover the sins of our nation currently.
Yeah.
To criticize your country doesn't necessarily mean you hate your country.
That's right.
We have issues, our country does, because so many have turned their back on God and his word.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we've just kind of scratched the surface again, but Christianity and patriotism can be very compatible as long as we keep our priorities right. And I'm talking about biblical priorities. Mm-hmm. As a follower of Christ and I'm a proud citizen of the land that we love, but I can't become prideful so much that I ignore the reality of what's going on.
Yeah.
So remember that being patriotic, it simply means loving one's country.
Well, and blowing stuff up.
Yeah, that's right. And fireworks. Yes, that's right. Yeah. But carried to this extreme, patriotism can become a form of idolatry as well.
Yeah, sure.
Particularly if your love for your country is greater, or your love for your political platform is greater than your love for God and your love for his word.
Yeah.
God's plan, we've got to remember this, is to redeem people of every tribe, tongue, and nation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's agree that America, as a nation, as a republic, we've done a fair number of wrong things with wrong attitudes over the years. And as we continue to have issues today, but the U.S. has also done a lot that's right.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of great people who have served and live as great citizens. And there are a lot of people who strive to have what we have.
That's right.
And a lot of people are trying to come here because they don't have it where they're coming from.
That's right. That's right. If we knew their stories, I think we'd be even more understanding. But it needs to be done the right way. And that's a problem. America may have problems, but it's still a land so far today of freedom and opportunity. Okay. However, we're regressing some. And that's why, like you said, people are wanting to come to the United States. This is what I don't get, Dave. If the certain political people talk about how horrible America is, and yet they're saying, come on, from all nations, come to America. Well, that's double standard. What are you doing? Sure
it is. Yeah.
Because down deep inside, they understand this was a great nation. Mm-hmm. But it's only a great nation, really. Any nation is great if its eyes are turned to God and they follow after his ways.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, a great country I'm not ashamed to be from, and yet it's a flawed nation because it has flawed citizens and it has a flawed theology. I'm reminded of people who are looking for the perfect church, and I just would have to remind them, and you would too, Dave, you're not allowed to go to that church because you're not perfect yourself.
That's right. The reason why the country is imperfect is because it's made up of imperfect people. That's right.
The focus should not be on racism. The focus should be on God. It should be on turning back to God, getting right with him. It's amazing. If we're in fellowship with God, we get in fellowship with other people.
That's right. That's right.
So, love for God and love for country, they can be compatible, sure, but only if our love for God and what's doing right according to his word is first.
Amen.
We got to choose to engage the culture with truth and grace and not be influenced by the culture.
I agree.
Any final thoughts, Dave?
I think we've done it.
We're living dangerously here.
We are.
But that's all right. I think one of the things is we all can learn to love better.
Yeah.
Well,
and I was just going to say that I would covet the comments from those who are listening to this. Let us know what you think, whether you're in agreement or disagreement with anything that we've said today. And we want to consider those things.
We do. I think, those are important conversations to have, and not just between a white person and a black person. Yeah. I think conversations of all colors need to happen.
Yeah.
So, well.
You know what I'm excited about?
What's that?
Well, this weekend, we're actually going to be in the same town together.
Yep.
Because my wife and I are coming to see you guys.
Yep.
And we're planning to do a podcast together in the same room. And that's going to be fun. So the next podcast you folks hear will probably be the two of us in the same room together.
That's going to be different. That'll be fun.
It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. Thanks, Dave, for this time that we've had together. And, we're not trying to solve the world's problems. We're just trying to talk about it and point you to the one who knows how to solve the problem. His name is Jesus Christ. So thanks again for joining us and doing life with us for this very short time. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, we ask you to subscribe, share, do whatever you need to do with this podcast, but help us get the word out.
Yeah. And please don't forget to comment. I mentioned that earlier. Whatever platform you're listening to this on, don't forget to comment. And until next time, always remember that 2 Daves are better than one.